Okay, welcome to another episode of data, innovation, and social impact overall. And today we're joined by Dr. Diana. How do you pronounce that last name? I want to
Orces.
make sure I don't, Orces. I want to make sure I don't mispronounce it. Dr. Diana Orces, the Director of Research at the Public Religion Research Institute, or PRRI. I guess PRRI is one of the leading organizations studying how religion.
Very nice meeting you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thing went wrong there. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry. So welcome to Energy Arbitrage AI podcast, where we explore kind of the intersection of data, innovation, and social impact. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Diana Orces, the Director of Research at the Public Religion Research Institute, or PRRI. And PRRI is one of the leading organizations studying how religion, values, and public opinion shape American society. In this conversation, we're going to discuss recent research, right, on religious pluralism, Christian nationalism, democracy, and climate change, and explore kind of how a technology like AI might support nonprofits like PRI. Anyway, good afternoon, Diana. Appreciate you joining us today. Where are you joining from, and how's your week been going so far?
Oh, it has been great. I am joining
Excellent.
from Washington, D.C. here.
Excellent.
And yes, happy to be here. And thank you again for the invitation.
Of course, of course. Great. So I guess before we dive in, could you share kind of what inspired you personally to focus research on public opinion and democracy?
Yes, I mean, just to let you know, I am originally from Quito, Ecuador, and I
Okay.
came here to pursue higher education. As you may know, Latin American countries are not very high on democracy, and it has been
Right.
an interesting experience to be here in the US,
Hmm.
as it has always been the idea of
Right.
democracy, and
Right.
given all the current dynamics going on, has been interesting to see how it plays this idea of democracy in concept and in practice is playing out in the context of the US. So in terms of my story, I came here, pursue higher education. I am a political scientist by training. And then my focus in graduate school was survey research. So I study a lot of, attitudes in the Latin American context, and now I
Mhm.
am focusing in the US context.
I see. I see. Great, great. And I guess for our listeners who may not be familiar, right, could you kind of give us a quick overview of PRI's mission and kind of the type of research your team leads?
Yeah, so in our organization, our main mission is to have the public understanding more of this relationship between religion and culture, right? And
Okay.
how politics play into these dynamics as well. So having an overview of American attitudes on a diverse of topics, but our primary focus is on the role of religion and how this impacts Americans' views overall.
Okay. Okay. Well, I was looking at some of your recent studies, right, on American values and pluralism, and it's fascinating data, right? I'd love to unpack some of these things today. So, jumping into it, as the PRI's director of research, what does your day-to-day look like, and what types of data or projects are you currently most focused on?
Yeah, so for us, a lot of our work has been in trying to understand better, as you mentioned, Christian nationalism. So one area of research that we primarily focus is on that topic. And
Mhm.
as I mentioned lately, we are interested in understanding democratic dynamics in the US and how it is related to this idea of the culture of politics in the US. And when you say about what happens day to day, so to start, we usually have collect data throughout the year. We collect
Mhm.
data 4 times per year. So we have
Mhm.
wave
Mhm.
one, wave two, wave three, and wave four. And
Mhm.
each wave we dedicate to a specific topic, right? I mean, like
Mhm.
like in this case, we focus on Christian nationalism. In other cases, we have done studies on, as you mentioned, climate change. We have focused on reproductive health of women, and also this idea of religious pluralism. So depending on the wave, we allocate most of our focus on these specific topics. And however, throughout the year, we also collect data on specific topics that allows us to understand better and have more data at the state level.
Mhm.
While in one wave we have there is a lower number of cases, by the end of the year we are able to say something about the public in each state.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, survey data is not cheap, especially when you want high quality data. It's very,
Mhm.
very expensive. So we have to be very, very strategic on how we collect the data, how we ask questions, and yeah, we make sure that, we are very good at producing the best available data and put it out there to the public.
I see. Well, how does PRRI go about collecting and analyzing the public opinion data across such complex social topics like religion and politics and identity? How do you do that?
So yes, so from the beginning, what we do is that, of course, as I mentioned, we do have to have a topic, right? Like there is a
Hmm.
topic of interest. We decide, internally, what will be the topic of that specific wave, and depending on the wave, we start creating the instrument, the survey instrument, right? We design the questions that we are going to ask, and then once we have a clear idea of all the questions or the survey instrument, then we go and collaborate with Ipsos. So Ipsos is our partner. We have a strong partnership with Ipsos, who are the ones who collect the data based on our questionnaire, right? They
Hmm.
collect, they give us the data, and then we do all the quality control, make sure that everything is okay. We clean up the data, and then I know that you are interested in this idea of how we use AI, and we have been using AI as is becoming more of a useful tool. We have been using some AI in terms of open-ended questions.
Hmm.
In terms of survey research, is very, very, it's hard to analyze data,
Hmm.
open-ended questions, right?
Hmm.
So
Right.
AI has become a very useful tool for that purpose. It allows us to code easily, or well, I wouldn't say easily, but I mean, it has allowed us to have or minimize the difficulty when coding open-ended questions. However,
I see.
it's still, a way that is still we are trying to understand better and maximize the way we use AI. And in terms of the data, like, so just to give you a little bit of perspective, we collect each wave, we collect around like 5,000 individual
Okay.
responses. So it is a lot. So when you think
Yeah.
about open-ended questions, and you have to code each response option if it's open-ended, is too much. I mean, it's pretty much almost impossible, or you will have to have one person dedicated to do this
Full
work.
time. Right. Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, with the use of AI, it has allowed us to summarize the way that we are coding. But again, AI is in the process of getting better and better and better. And without the touch, the human touch, it has not been very accurate, right? So, like, I
Hmm.
mean,
Right.
we do need to go through this process of making sure that whatever we get is accurate.
I see.
But that's one way that we have been using AI.
Okay, very good. Now, your recent findings show kind of shifting of attitudes, right, towards religious diversity in America. What are some of the most surprising or encouraging trends you've seen?
Well, one of like the encouraging trends that we have seen is that yes, it continues. The American public continues to support religious pluralism, right? I mean, we still see that the majority of Americans still support this idea of a diverse nation. What we have seen, however, is that there has been an increase in this idea of or like a decrease in this support, but still majorities support a nation that is diverse.
I see.
Of
I
course,
see.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and of course there are certain groups of the population that they still support a Christian nation. For example, we do have white evangelical Protestants tend to support, majority support a Christian nation. And one interesting group is Hispanic Protestants, also
Uh,
support a nation that is mainly made up of Christians. But
I see.
overall, across all other religious groups and other groups, you do see support for a diverse, religious diverse
I
nation.
see. PRRI has done some leading work, right, on Christian nationalism. How is that shaping public discourse or influencing public, kind of policy conversations right now? How do you see that?
Yes, I mean it is fascinating. We started collecting data on this idea of Christian nationalism. One
Hmm.
thing to keep in mind is that the way you collect it is not asking directly individuals if they are Christian nationalists. Correct?
Oh,
You
right,
find
right.
different ways to ask a question and then come up with this concept. So we have this scale that is based on five different questions. And what we did is that we create this scale and then we put people in these different groups. So those who are score higher on this scale, we call them adherents, Christian nationalism
Mm.
adherents, sympathizers, skeptics, or rejectors. So just to give you a few like examples of the questions that we asked is how much agreement or disagreement Americans are with the U.S. laws, if they should be based on Christian beliefs, right, or Christian values, if being
Right,
Christian is an important part of being truly American, if the U.S. government should declare the American a Christian nation, and for example, if God has called Christians to exercise dominion over all areas of American society. So you would
mm,
expect that those who score high on these questions, those are the ones that are more likely to be Christian nationalism adherents.
mm, mm.
Only 10% of Americans are adherents. And then the
I
other
see.
20% are, roughly 20%, they tend to be sympathizers. So when you're saying if they are having an impact on public discourse, I mean, it's interesting to see that when you look at the relationship of this idea of Christian nationalism and you put it aside with all of these other measures, different measures on immigration, religious plurality that I just mentioned. If you
Hmm.
think about like abortion rights,
Right.
or like women's rights,
Hmm.
all these other measures, you do see that Christian nationalists are distinct, right? Like it's a
You're
group
right.
that is very distinct than other groups.
I
Um,
see. Now,
and
now,
we would say
in saying that,
leadership.
yeah,
Go
sorry, go
ahead,
ahead.
sir. No, no,
No,
go
no.
ahead.
So I was saying, so with that, I mean, I want to segue into, you see any generational and regional divides, how Americans view religious pluralism or national identity?
Yeah, national identity matters, and we see that in terms. What has been very interesting to observe is that, of course, with what's going on, and actually, like pride in America has come down. So,
Mm,
what has been interesting is that this pride, like in 2011, when we asked first the question, like all Americans, right? Like what we see is
mhm.
that all Americans are proud of being American. But most recently, what has you still see a majority, or like I mean, are like around half that are still proud, um, and especially among white Americans, Americans of
Right.
color express lower pride.
Lower. I see. Right. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. And I guess here, let's switch gears into kind of more federal policies, democracy, and civic health. And had attitudes about democracy and governance show up in your surveys, especially regarding trust in federal institutions? How does
I
that
mean,
show up?
it has been interesting because what we have noticed is that it depends on who you ask, right? But in general terms, you see, for example, that the military has a high support, right? But then
Right.
other institutions, such as ICE, has a lower confidence, right, or trust. What we have seen is also a decline over time in trust in institutions, especially in the federal government. We have seen a decline. Also, we have seen a decline in organized religion, right? Like, I mean,
Mm,
talking about being a public religion research institute, what we see is these lower levels of confidence in organized religion. And
mm,
if you talk about the Americans in general, you do see an increase in those who are identified as non-Christians in
I
terms
see.
of they are unaffiliated today. So the percent of Christians has declined significantly over the years.
Okay. And you see any patterns in how faith communities are responding to democratic challenges like polarization, disinformation, or civic engagement?
I mean, in terms, it's interesting because it depends who you ask, right? I mean,
Ask,
like,
right.
we know, like, the huge impact that social media is having. I mean, individuals are getting different information, again, depending who you ask. So, that is being observed in terms of polarization, right? Like, I mean, these views, you especially see, like, these very, very extreme views on one topic. One thing
Mm,
that I did want to bring up, and that maybe is a good outcome, is that in terms of higher education, everyone, including, these more extreme groups, or like those who like tend to be outside of the general public, do
hmm
agree that in terms of policy, the universities shouldn't be controlled by the government, right? So
Right.
that's one key finding,
hmm
that everyone agrees that the university should have been or the information in the universities shouldn't be controlled.
Right.
Um, so that's one area that everyone agrees on.
I
Another
see.
area that everyone agrees on is in checks and balances, right? I mean, like,
Right.
Americans still believe that checks and balances are important.
hmm I see. I see. And from your perspective, what are some of the most significant threats or opportunities you're seeing in the health of the U.S. democracy today?
I mean, the opportunities that I see is important is making sure, and I mean, I guess, like, is at the same time is an opportunity and also a threat, is this what we're talking about in terms of information, right? I mean, while getting informed is important, and understanding better the other side, I think is very, very important that we are exposed to the other side. The trends that we see right now in terms of polarization is because we are becoming, everyone seems to be, more in tune with our own beliefs, and we search for information that furthers our own beliefs. And I would say, like, one area that we should take an opportunity to understand the other side. We should be exposed to different kinds of views, and that's democracy, right? I mean, we
Right.
should be able to open ourselves to all these different views and trying to understand better in order to become more moderate ourselves as well.
So great. That's a good point. Now, switching gears into kind of climate change and values from your 2023 study, I was reading through that, and I found it really fascinating, particularly the link between faith, politics, and kind of environmental concern. Could you share some of the key takeaways from your 2023 study?
Yes, I mean, in terms I know that we talk a little bit about like Christian nationalism, that Christian nationalists, adherents, and sympathizers have specific views. What we see in terms of climate change is sort of the same dynamics. You see specific populations that are or believe less in climate change.
Mm,
So one important takeaway is that yeah, like majorities of Americans, 61% do think that climate change is due or caused by human activity. Right? And
hmm.
then we have 28% that they believe that is due to natural patterns. And you only have 10% who say that there is no solid evidence. However, when we think about like these 10%, usually you see these groups that may tend to believe that is not true, right? So what you see is, and this is correlated to other attitudes, for example, that they don't think that is a major problem. So that's another thing. You see the same views across the board in terms of climate change. And also in terms of policy, another important aspect in terms of climate change is that when we are thinking about like climate actions, who supports these climate actions? You do see majority support to do something about climate change among
Hmm.
Americans, but you see in terms of again this polarization, certain groups tend to have less support.
I see. I see. That's great. Well, out of that study, I mean, did any data surprise you about which groups are most supportive of climate action?
Yes, I mean, usually what you see in terms of support is, of course, we are a religious or not religious organization, like a religion an organization that does research on the relationship between religion and
Mm,
different views. And what we see is that, for example, an affiliated Americans tend to be more pro climate change, right? Like, or
mm,
more pro actions to
mm,
do something about climate change. And so that's one group that you continuously see across the board. One interesting, I mean, like, of course, I mean, it's interesting in the sense that you do see consistently that those who say that religion is the most important thing in their lives, these
mm.
tend to have more restrictive views about doing something about climate change. In fact, like they are less likely to believe that there is climate change, right?
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, that's interesting. And then I guess how might this data like inform policymakers or faith leaders trying to kind of mobilize the communities around climate resilience?
Yes, I mean, what has been interesting is that we have seen like Catholics, for example, you do see like Catholics and leaders in Catholic churches talking about this climate change. In fact, I mean, like at the time when we did this study in 2023, Pope Francis was in the news, right, and talking about the importance of climate change. And we do believe that that kind of rhetoric does impact people's views on these issues.
Okay, I see. Well, thank you for that. I guess hearing how PRRI synthesizes such vast amounts of data, right? Opinion data makes me think about kind of where AI might support your mission, right? And you guys, I know you're using it. If you could wave kind of magic wand, what kind of data challenges would you want solved the quick the first, right? Most important to you would it be speed, right, of collecting the data, the integration, visualization, or predictive modeling?
Well, like, I mean, thank you for asking because, again, one way that it has been useful for us has been the open ended questions. But another thing that it was very, very useful is that we
Mm,
were able, of course, we do the analysis, we do some, like statistical analysis, but like, we do have a lot of data. So, one thing to know is that we have a lot of data, and whenever we need to do analysis over time, it does take a lot of time. It does take a lot lot of time. So we have been using AI also to make these processes more efficient. So in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the coding, cleaning coding, how can we, like do analysis at once, right? Instead of just using one data set, like making sure that we can use multiple data sets and get the results. So that was one way that AI was very, very useful to clean up our coding and help us make our processes a lot more efficient.
I see. Look, I mean, a lot of the work that we do here at Energy Arbitrage AI, we're focused on using predictive analytics, right, to understand the markets and behavioral patterns, right, of business clients, typically commercial clients. Do you see potential for similar tools to help nonprofits like PRRI deepen insights or expand research, the reach that you have?
Yes, I mean, I think it is as we are becoming also more interested in doing predictive models. One thing to keep in mind is that because of the nature of our mission, which is to put out there information and make it the easiest way so the most people understand, that's
Right.
one of the reasons we have been like, we have done some predictive analysis, but little, just to make sure
Mm-mm.
that whatever we put out there is understood by everyone. But I think as people are getting more used to this idea of predictive models, I mean, and this is responding to your question about like, hey, what is one way that we can take opportunities about using AI is making also available to the public how to interpret these data, right? And yes, I mean, we do think that it could be useful as we continue our work in understanding better American attitudes on a different set of topics.
Right, right. Well, yeah, I know even though PRI is kind of a nonprofit, right, we often explore partnerships that don't necessarily require funding. For example, kind of data collaborations or pilot projects. Would exploring something like that align with PRI's future research innovation goals?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know more, right? Like, I mean, the more we know and the opportunities that are open, I think is one way that we could explore more on thinking about collaboration and the use of the data.
I see. I see. I see. Well, look, I mean, this has been incredibly insightful, Diana. I mean, I guess what's next on PRI's research agenda? That gets you most excited.
I think every day is very exciting at PRI. We do a lot of research, and we are in the process of collecting our way four. At the moment, I mean, we have, as noted, like we do collect every single way Christian nationalism data, but this time around, we will try to explore a little bit more this idea of political violence. So more on that
Hmm.
later, but that's one thing that we want to explore deeper and understand better these dynamics.
I see. So if my listeners want to stay up to date on PRI's data or publications, what's the best way to follow your work?
I mean, we are like in social media. Are in we have our website. We just publicly released our study on Wednesday in collaboration with the Brookings Institution.
Hmm.
Please, I mean, go visit the website, visit the study. I mean, we have a wealth of results, very, very interesting results on the American views on a variety of topics. And yes, I mean, we also have the data available. So if there are any data analysts who wants to dive into the data sets, we also have them available online. So please, and also you can reach out to me to my email. Again, my name is Diane Orces at PRRI.org.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for sharing your time, your perspective. I know my listeners are going to find this discussion eye-opening. I guess this wraps up our episode of Energy Arbitrage AI. And a big thank you to Dr. Diana Orcez and the PRI team for their incredible work studying how faith and values shape our democracy. I guess to learn more, as I said, just visit the website, PRRI.org. And if you're curious about energy arbitrage AI, uses of predictive analytics to help organizations make smarter data-driven decisions, you can visit energyarbitrageai.com. Thanks for listening. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired. Thank you.